The night was cold and silent, the kind of silence that pressed against the walls of the old farmhouse. The human sat by the dim lamp, staring at the wooden table where half-eaten bread and a small bowl of stew rested. He had eaten enough for the day and thought of throwing the leftovers to the pigs outside when he heard it. A knock. It was not a polite knock, not strong either, but weak, shaking, like someone had no strength left. His heart froze. Nobody came here, not at this hour, not in this place. He stood up slowly, hand brushing the old rifle leaning against the wall. Another knock came, softer this time, almost like a whisper. He moved to the door, every step heavy with suspicion. When he pulled it open, his breath caught. A figure stood there, covered in dirt and torn cloth. Her skin glowed faintly under the moonlight, not human skin, but something smooth, bluish, almost transparent. Her eyes were too large, shimmering with fear and exhaustion. In her arms, she held something small wrapped in cloth. She swayed as if her legs could no longer carry her. Please. Her voice cracked, dry and weak. She looked straight at him with desperate eyes. Please, may I have the leftovers for my child? The human blinked, unsure if he heard right. An alien here at his door begging for food? His first thought was danger. Maybe it was a trick. Maybe soldiers waited in the shadows. Ready to storm in the moment, he let her inside. But then he looked at the bundle in her arms. She pulled back the cloth, and he saw the child. Small, thin, almost weightless. The little alien's chest rose weakly, eyes half closed. Its lips were cracked. It had not eaten for days, maybe longer. The human's stomach tightened. He knew what starvation looked like. He had seen it during the war, seen it in children's faces when rations ran out. The alien woman lowered her head as if ashamed. 3 days. No food. Please. Just the scraps. Anything. Her knees gave way and she almost collapsed on the step. She held her child tighter, rocking it gently, whispering words in her language that he did not understand. The sound was like broken glass, soft and painful. He gripped the doorframe. Every part of him screamed not to trust. Humans and aliens did not mix. They had fought too many wars. She could be a scout, testing him. He could already imagine the laughter of his neighbors if they found out he let an alien into his home. They would call him weak, traitor, fool. Yet when he looked again at the child's thin hands, when he saw the way the mother's shoulders shook, all of that noise in his head dimmed. This was not a soldier. This was not a trick. This was hunger, pure and raw. He looked behind her. The night fields were empty, only the sound of the wind through the dry grass. No soldiers, no hidden danger that he could see. He exhaled slowly, then glanced back at the table where the food sat waiting. Stay there, he muttered, voice low. He turned, walked back, and picked up the bowl of stew. It was cold now, but it still smelled of herbs and meat. He hesitated for one last moment, then carried it to the door. The woman's eyes widened when she saw the food. She reached out with trembling hands, almost afraid he would pull it back. He handed her the bowl carefully. She sat on the ground right there, holding the child close, dipping her fingers in the broth and letting drops fall into the little one's mouth. The child stirred, weak but alive, making a faint sound. The mother's tears fell silently, glowing on her pale cheeks in the moonlight. She whispered again, but this time it was to him. Thank you. Her voice shook, heavy with both relief and fear. The human stood over her, jaw tight. He should shut the door. He should send her away. This was not his fight, not his burden, but he could not move. The scene in front of him, mother feeding her starving child with trembling hands, held him like a chain. Finally, he asked, voice hard, "Why here? Why my door?" She looked up slowly, eyes glassy and full of exhaustion. No one else would answer. He felt his chest tighten. He looked past her into the darkness again. For the first time, he thought he saw movement out there, shadows that did not belong to the wind. His hand brushed the rifle by the door again. Something was wrong. The alien mother pressed the child against her chest, rocking softly as if sensing his sudden unease. Her eyes darted to the darkness too, and fear flashed across her face. Whatever hunted her was still out there. The human swallowed hard, the weight of choice pressing down on him. He could send her away, close the door, and pretend this moment never happened. Or he could let her in, knowing it would change everything. The woman raised her head, her lips trembling as she repeated, softer this time, "Please." The human gripped the rifle tighter. He did not answer, not yet. But in his silence and the way he stayed by the open door instead of slamming it shut, the decision had already begun to take root. The night no longer felt empty. Something had entered it, fragile, desperate, and dangerous. The bowl was empty by the time the child's breathing steadied, though his little hands still twitched as if searching for more. The mother's shoulders sagged with relief, but her eyes remained restless, always flicking toward the door. The human noticed it and felt the tight knot in his stomach pull harder. She wasn't just hungry, she was running from something. He stood in the middle of the room, rifle close, and watched her. The firelight threw shadows on her face, making her look even more fragile. Yet there was a strength in the way she clutched the child. She looked like someone who had lost everything, but was not ready to fall apart. "You can't stay here," he muttered, his voice rough. "If they're chasing you, they'll find my farm too." Her lips parted, as if she wanted to argue, but the words refused to come. Instead, she lowered her head and whispered, "Just one night. Please." He hated the way her voice made something inside him twist. It reminded him of promises he had tried to bury long ago, of faces he could never forget. He turned away, staring at the shelves where his food supplies were stacked. Not much, enough for one man living alone, not enough for extra mouths. Yet the child had clung to life after a few drops of stew, and he could not erase that image from his mind. He set his jaw and finally spoke. "Fine, one night. But you keep quiet, and if trouble comes, you take the back door and run." The woman nodded quickly, too quickly, as if afraid he might change his mind. She shifted closer to the fire, wrapping the child in the blanket he handed her. For the first time, a hint of warmth touched her expression, but her eyes still trembled at every crackle outside the window. The human sat at the table, the rifle across his lap, listening to the wind scrape against the walls. He thought of his neighbors. If they found out, they wouldn't forgive him. They'd call him weak, traitor, fool. But then he looked again at the pair huddled on his floor, the child breathing faintly against its mother's chest, and he knew he couldn't throw them back into the dark. The night dragged on slowly. At one point, the child whimpered, and the mother hushed him with soft sounds, a lullaby in a language the human could not understand. It was gentle, fragile, yet filled with an ache that struck him deeper than any blade. When the lullaby faded, he leaned forward. "Who are you running from?" Her head jerked up. For a moment, she looked like she might lie, but exhaustion crushed the effort. "My people," she whispered. "They don't forgive weakness. We asked humans for help once. For that, we were cast out." She brushed her hand against the child's face. "He is marked. They will never take him back." The human's fists clenched. He had seen cruelty before, but this was worse, punishing a mother and child for the crime of survival. He wanted to curse, but he held it inside. She watched him closely, searching for any sign of disgust or pity. Instead, he asked, "And now?" "They will kill us," she said simply, voice hollow, "unless we disappear." Silence pressed against the walls. The human stared at the fire, jaw hard, knowing exactly what he had just invited into his life. He had thought loneliness was his only burden. Now, in one night, strangers had turned his house into a hiding place. He heard something outside, a crunch, faint like weight on gravel. His hand shot to the rifle. The woman stiffened, clutching the child so tightly the little one stirred. Their eyes met, both wide with the same realization. Someone was out there. He rose slowly, every step deliberate, and moved toward the window. The darkness pressed close, but through it, he thought he saw a shape move between the trees. His pulse quickened. When he turned back, the woman was on her knees by the fire, eyes wet, whispering words in her language again. She didn't have to explain. He understood. Whatever hunted her had already found the trail, and his farm, his quiet life, was now in the middle of it. The stew had barely given strength to the child, but at least his breathing no longer rattled like dry leaves. The mother kept pressing kisses to his forehead, as if afraid he would slip away the moment she looked elsewhere. The human sat rigid in his chair, rifle against his leg, his ears straining at every sound the night carried. He had lived alone for years, yet the silence tonight felt heavier, filled with an invisible presence. The woman broke the quiet first. "He hasn't eaten in 3 days," she said, her voice raw. "I gave him water from the river, but it only made him weaker. I thought—" She stopped, trembling, and pulled the child closer. "I thought I would bury him tomorrow." The words cut through the human like a blade. He had seen death on the battlefield, seen men fall with curses on their lips, but the thought of a mother whispering goodbyes to her starving child was different. It stirred something he had buried long ago. "Why didn't you go to your own people?" he asked sharply. Her eyes lifted to his, wide and haunted. "They hate him. They hate me. They call him shame-born." Her lips trembled, and for a heartbeat she looked more like a child than a mother. "They would rather see us dead than fed." The human leaned back, struggling to breathe evenly. He wanted to be angry at her kind, but all he saw was truth carved into her face. He glanced at the boy again. His small chest rose and fell, fragile like a candle flame in the wind. The house groaned against the night wind, and for a moment he thought it was just wood settling. But then he caught it again, a faint thump outside, deliberate, not the random movement of branches. His skin prickled. The woman noticed his tension. Her hand shook as she reached for the fire poker, though she clearly had no idea how to use it. Her eyes darted toward the door, terror flashing across her features. The human raised a hand, signaling her to stay quiet. He moved toward the window, boots silent on the wooden floor. The fields outside were dark, the trees swaying under the moon. He saw nothing at first, only shadows and silver light. Then, at the edge of the field, he caught it, a figure, crouched low, watching the house. His grip on the rifle tightened. When he turned back, the woman was already whispering to her child again, words like prayers spilling from her lips. Her fear was not of hunger anymore. It was of being found. The human's mind raced. He had let her in, and now he understood the cost. Whoever hunted her had followed her trail straight to his door. He thought of slamming the door on them earlier, of ending the problem before it began. But it was too late now. The choice he made had already bound him. The child whimpered in his mother's arms, sensing her trembling. She rocked him gently, her voice shaking as she sang that strange lullaby again, soft and broken. The human felt it seep into his chest, both fragile and fierce at once. Outside, the figure moved closer. The human shut the shutters tight and turned the lock on the door, but it did nothing to ease the weight pressing on his chest. The alien woman sat on the floor with her child, her eyes following his every move, waiting for him to speak. He finally set the rifle against the wall and faced her. "You need to tell me the truth," he said. His voice was low but sharp, like a blade against stone. "Why are they hunting you?" For a long moment she stared into the fire, her lips pressed together. The flames painted her face with shifting light, revealing both exhaustion and fear. At last she whispered, "Because I begged for help from a human." The words struck him harder than a bullet. She lifted her head, meeting his eyes. "Our law says we must never depend on your kind. We are taught you are weak, selfish, dangerous. But when my child was sick, no one from my people came. Only a human soldier gave us medicine. For that crime, they cast us out." The human's jaw clenched. He had seen hatred before, but this kind of cruelty felt heavier. To punish a mother for saving her child's life, it was beyond reason. He studied the boy, who slept now, curled in her arms, unaware of the danger wrapped around him. "They call him shame-born," she continued, her voice shaking. "To them, he is proof that I am impure, proof that I chose weakness, and weakness is unforgivable." Her hands tightened protectively around the child. They would rather kill him than allow him to live among them. The human's stomach churned. He thought of the neighbors who spoke of aliens with venom, who believed every story of their cruelty. Now here was proof in flesh and blood. She was not lying. Her voice carried the weight of someone who had lived through exile, who had lost everything except the bundle in her arms. He paced the floor, boots thudding against old wood. His quiet life was built on walls of silence and distance, but those walls were cracking now. He could almost hear the echo of his own past. Faces of children during the war, hungry eyes staring at him from behind fences. He had sworn never to carry another burden like that. And yet here they were, on his floor, making him remember everything. The woman's eyes flicked to the window, fear igniting in them again. She leaned forward, her voice barely a whisper. "You heard them outside, didn't you? They've been following us for days. If they find us, they won't stop at me." She swallowed hard. "They'll burn your farm too. To them, anyone who helps is guilty." The human gritted his teeth, the weight of her words sinking deep. She was right. By letting them in, He had already chosen a side. There would be no going back. He sat down heavily on the chair, staring at the flames. So I take you in, and they come for me. I throw you out, and you both die. He rubbed his face with his hands. Either way, my life doesn't stay quiet anymore. The woman said nothing, only lowered her head, the firelight glinting off the tears sliding down her cheeks. Her silence was not pleading this time. It was surrender, as if she had already accepted whatever fate came next. The human stared at her, at the small child breathing softly in her arms, and felt the decision forming inside him, solid and dangerous. He could hear movement outside again, closer this time, the faint crunch of boots in the dirt. Whoever hunted her was here already, and the night would not end quietly. The sound outside grew clearer, boots grinding against gravel, a murmur of voices carried on the wind. The human's grip tightened around the rifle as he moved to the window. Shapes flickered in the darkness, tall and broad, their armor reflecting faint lines of moonlight. They were not hiding anymore, they were searching with intent. The alien woman's breath caught. She clutched the child against her chest, rocking him silently. Her lips moved in prayer or in farewell. It was hard to tell which. Her eyes begged him for something she could not speak aloud. He felt the anger rising inside, not at her, but at the audacity of the hunters outside his walls. His land, his house, his quiet life, they had no right to trespass. Yet his mind raced with the truth. If he fought, it would not end here. Blood on his doorstep meant blood would follow him everywhere. The voices grew louder. One barked in order, sharp and guttural. Another answered with a laugh. A beam of pale light swept across the yard as one of them raised a torch-like device, scanning the ground for tracks. The glow reached the edge of the farmhouse, sliding across the broken fence, creeping closer to the door. The mother let out a small sound, half sob, half gasp. The child stirred, a weak cry escaping his lips. She tried to hush him, but the noise had already slipped into the night. Outside, the voices stopped. Silence fell heavy, cruel. Then deliberate steps crunched toward the door. The human's heart hammered, but his body moved with steady precision. He motioned for her to stay down, then pulled the rifle close to his chest. He positioned himself between the door and the firelight, every sense alive. A fist slammed against the door, once, twice. The wood rattled under the weight. "In there," a voice snarled, thick with certainty. "Open, human. We know what you hide." The woman's face went pale, her body trembling so hard she could barely keep hold of the child. The human glanced at her once, then turned back to the door. His voice, when it came, was calm and cold. "You picked the wrong house." There was a pause outside, then mocking laughter. "You think you can defy us? For a creature cast out of her own people? You'll die for her, and it won't even matter." Another slam shook the door, harder this time. Dust fell from the ceiling beams. The human's finger brushed the trigger, his breath steady. He remembered nights like this before, in ruined cities, in burned villages, when the only choice was to stand or run. Running had never suited him. The woman pressed her forehead against her child's, whispering words too soft to hear, preparing for the worst. The human's voice broke the silence again, low and sharp. "Step 1 foot inside, and you'll never step out." The handle turned. The wood groaned. Shadows shifted under the doorframe as the hunters pressed forward, and the farmhouse, once a place of solitude, became the stage for a fight neither side could walk away from, unchanged. The door burst inward with a crash that shook the walls. Splinters flew as armored figures pushed into the farmhouse, their eyes glowing faintly beneath heavy masks. The human raised his rifle and fired before the first could take a full step inside. The blast roared through the small room. The hunter staggered back, dented and smoking. The second rushed forward, blade flashing in the firelight. The human swung the butt of the rifle into his jaw, the crack echoing loud, and shoved him hard against the wall. The fight was fast, brutal, nothing elegant about it, just survival. He fought like a man who had nothing left to lose. The woman shielded the child, crawling back toward the corner, her breath sharp and panicked. She could not take her eyes off the chaos, off the man who stood between her and death. Every shot, every strike felt like an impossible defiance. The third hunter lunged, blade aimed for the human's chest. The human caught the weapon with his hands, the steel slicing his palm, hot blood dripping onto the floor. He roared with effort, twisting the blade free, then drove his knee into the alien's stomach. The hunter collapsed, gasping. The smell of gunpowder, sweat, and burning wood filled the farmhouse. The fire in the hearth snapped wildly, sparks flying as if feeding off the violence. The woman held her child tighter, rocking him, whispering a frantic chant, begging silently for the storm to end. The human's arms ached, but he did not falter. He grabbed the fallen blade, swinging it with a savage strike that sent the last intruder crashing through the doorway. Blood stained the floorboards, heavy boots scraped, groans faded into silence. Only the ragged breath of the man remained, harsh and uneven in the smoke-filled air. He lowered the rifle slowly, scanning the broken door. The fields outside were empty again, though he knew emptiness could be deceiving. His knuckles were raw, his hands dripping red, but his stance remained firm. The woman stared at him as if seeing a creature from a story, impossible, terrifying, yet unshakably real. No one had ever stood for her like this. No one had ever faced death for her child. You. Her voice cracked, the word trembling. Why? The human didn't answer. He couldn't. His body shook with the weight of what he had done, with the understanding that this was no longer just about a single night or a single choice. He had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. The child stirred weakly, reaching a tiny hand out, brushing against the edge of the human's bloodied coat. His fingers curled there, holding fast as if claiming him in silence. The human looked down at that small hand and felt something inside him lock into place. He had defended his home. Yes, but more than that, he had defended them, and in doing so, he knew the quiet life he once lived was gone forever. Smoke drifted from the shattered doorway, curling into the night air where the bodies of the hunters lay sprawled in silence. The human stood there, chest heaving, his rifle heavy in his grip. The world outside his farm had just crashed into his life, and he knew nothing would ever return to the way it was. Behind him, the woman slowly rose, still clutching her child. Her steps were unsteady, her eyes wide, fixed on the blood splattered across the wooden floor. She whispered something in her language, a sound filled with awe and disbelief, before her gaze lifted to him. The human did not meet her eyes at first. He stared at the horizon, where the faint glow of more torches flickered in the distance. Reinforcements. They would not stop with 3. They would come again, stronger, angrier. "You can't stay here," he muttered, voice rough, almost breaking. "They'll burn this place to the ground." Her lips parted, trembling as she tried to speak, but the child stirred and pulled her attention back. His tiny fingers reached toward the human again, curling around his blood-stained coat. The word came out weak, broken, but clear. "Papa." The sound hit him harder than any bullet. He froze, staring down at the child. The woman gasped softly, tears filling her eyes. She looked from her son to the human, her mouth trembling as if she wanted to stop it, but she could not. The human knelt slowly, his battered body aching with every move. He let the child grip his finger, fragile and warm. In that moment, the decision he had been resisting all night carved itself into stone. He was no longer a man living alone. He had stepped into their fight, and now their survival was bound to his own. The woman fell to her knees across from him, her tears falling freely, glistening in the firelight. "You'll be hunted too," she whispered. "You'll lose everything." He met her gaze at last, eyes burning with a quiet fire. "Then we fight together." For the first time, she did not look afraid. Her lips curved into something almost like hope, fragile and uncertain but alive. She leaned close, pressing her forehead to his hand where the child still held on, a silent vow passing between them. Outside, the night carried the sound of marching feet drawing nearer. The farmhouse stood broken but not defeated, its walls scarred yet still standing. Inside, a new bond had been forged, one born from hunger, fear, and blood. The human rose again, gripping his rifle, but this time he was not alone. The woman stood beside him, her child safe in her arms, and for the first time she believed survival was possible. The quiet life he once clung to was gone. In its place burned something far stronger, something he had thought long dead: purpose. And when the next wave came, they would not find a lonely farmer. They would find a family ready to fight.